1969. The bottom third is now a hotel. And as brand new restaurant over to our right, Riverwalk. Recently, they have TV shows like Chicago Fire, PD, and at one time, a beautiful grand concourse where the train station stood directly to our right. Type buildings, global black box modern. And these type of buildings really came to being after the Second World War in late 1970s and early 80s. You will also notice a number of postmodern buildings. And postmodern architects got sick of the stripped down variation of international black box modern that is very boring, and after a while it kind of was. Also take notice of all the bridge tender houses for the drawbridges that span the Chicago River. The bridge houses are all very different and quite unique, have their own design. Take notice of them. Also take notice of the bridges themselves. They all have minor differences, including the railings. The type of drawbridge we have here, Chicago type, thick trunnion, double leaf, bascule bridge. And bascule is the French term for seesaw or teeter-totter. That's pretty much what they are. Precisely balanced seesaws on either side makes a very small amount of horsepower to raise and lower them. It can go up in about a minute's time, come back down about a minute's time. Michigan Avenue, you're to our right coming up, the elegant white glazed terracotta-clad Wrigley building. The part on the river is 1921, northern half is 1924, skybridge in between at the back of 1921. North Michigan Avenue, initially called Pine Street. At the turn of the last century, we found the townhomes, mansions, and apartment buildings. Now, some common questions people always ask me: how deep is the river? Main branch about 24 feet deep, north and south branch about 20 feet deep. Right here in the front, tall reflective glass building with a spire on top of Chicago's second tallest building. The height does include the very top and tip of the spire. Trump International Hotel and Tower, designed by Adrian Smith, formerly of Skidmore, owns the mural. A pretty good example of the contextual style. The building fits into the site and surrounding. The building itself ascends in height. You have setbacks at different levels that relate to the roof lines of surrounding structures. The first setbacks are transparent, you can see directly in that space. You will then notice the floors 4 through 12, the parking garage of the building. During evening hours, see these columns rising up behind the glass of modern and international architecture. Ludwig Mies Vanderbilt, whose very famous motto was less is more. And as we near State Street to our right coming up, commonly referred to the twin Corn Cob Towers. In reality, we're going to have Marina City. Built between 1960 and 64, designed by architect Bertrand Goldberg. With the floors of both buildings, a parking, a proportion of condominiums. 16 petals per floor. The former office building in the background is now a hotel, and former theater now the House of Blues. Small shops and restaurants on site, marina at the base. Virtually, this looks good. Virtually a city within a city, an introvert's paradise. Moving is valet. What they can do, what you want to do, is use your eyes. See what you like, see what you don't like. Notice the space to our right coming up, being framed and hemmed in by the textures of these three buildings. First, there are tenant bay windows, Western Chicago River North, 87. In the background, the flat reflective glass and horizontal banding from 2009. And to our right, vertical aluminum mullions on 321 North Clark Street, 1988. Clark skid to our right coming up. This beautiful red brick and terracotta class structure runs horizontally along the river in the Prairie School design. The Reed Murdoch Warehouse Building, 1914. Modern, glassy, shiny, and reflective, 300 North LaSalle. Upper current Chilton architects out of New Haven, Connecticut. Clear line verticality and setbacks of the building rises. Were completed back in 1930. At that time, this is the world's largest commercial building, having more than 4 million square feet of space within its walls. So massive, like 17, 18 years of three branches come together. This whole area's transitioned dramatically over the past decade. So 2020, 2023, in the gap 2016, in front 2016, 2017, running corner to our left, 2020. So 6 new buildings around here for the past decade. Making the most recent addition, the one to our right coming up, roughly 60-story Salesforce Tower, 2023. Have time while you're here, visit the space here to our right, nicely landscaped and great for photographs. As we transition from North Branch to South, we'll discuss the building to our left with that very cool base, 150 North Riverside. We'll go up. Front left coming up is called Fulton House. Initially, the North American cold storage building, a giant icebox and refrigerator that had very few windows. It was renovated like 40 years ago, 45 years ago. They knocked more than 500 holes in that building for the balconies and the windows. Before they could do any work, however, they had to wait like 6 months to allow the walls of the building to fully thaw out. So while Ivy comes back to life, it doesn't look so plain and boring. But then, you fast forward 20 years here to our left, you have an entirely new neighborhood called Kinsey Park. This sets back about 30 feet from the river to include these public promenades with Riverwalk and landscaping. The city of Chicago, developers, and residents are no longer looking at the river as being that nasty little stream. We're trying to embrace it and view it as the city's second waterfront. And the quality of the water in the river has dramatically improved over the last half century, from being highly toxic to just polluted. So we are working on a slowly but surely. To our left. So, all three high rises here to our left are rental. That middle one, they have two duplexes, about 4,000 square feet, going for only 40 grand a month. And they're occupied. Not by me. They're occupied. Now, do not misspeak. 40 grand a month. Copy, cut, paste, copy, cut, paste, copy, cut, paste, copy, cut, paste. Don't go home drunk, you don't know which one is yours. The ones along the river's edge cost the most, like 2 to 2.3 million, about 4,000 square feet, and have all 4 levels. In the background, slightly smaller, back to about 3,000 square feet. Last time I saw prices back there, about 850. Back in 1992, they replaced some of the pilings around this bridge because of age and rot. And what happened was, they accidentally drove one of those pilings too far into the river, cracking the roof of an old freight tunnel that goes under the corner of that bridge. Eventually, the roof of the freight tunnel gave way, causing millions of gallons of river water to rush and flood into the tunnels, flooding almost all the basements downtown. Cost more than $1 billion to clean up. The fact never in my short life seen this bridge down. The reason they keep it up when it is closed, the clearance here is only about 4 feet. They would have to have it manned 24/7. 1908, Chicago Northwestern Railway Company would not be torn down, has been landmarked. At one time, the tracks went all the way out to Navy Pier. They still just this slender sliver of a building to our right called River Bend 2003. Some townhomes and mansionettes along the base, but got a few floors of parking, above that the tower units. You see how skinny the building is. The reason it is so slender, you have train tracks that curve around the back side, causing this piece of land to be very narrow. So tight, there was not enough room to construct ramps that access the garage. See the train tracks to our right. Still there, has been decked over with that plaza and 50-story tall building called River Point. Steakhouse building right here in front, lantern on top, just sits on a very historic site. Back in 1860, a temporary building stood on that site called the Wigwam, the very first ever Republican National Convention where Abraham Lincoln was nominated. Yourself, that full image, you're gonna believe in 2028. Now, coming up here to our right, the building draws everyone's attention. Total engineering diva of this area, 150 North Riverside, by Guest Partners, straight down. On this side, there was slam along the river's edge. On the other side, to the train tracks. This is called a core-supported building. The main central concrete core takes on the weight and load of the tower. Those diagonal beams transfer that load. To example, rises a 55-story tall building, 110 North Wacker by Guest Partners. Same firm with a very cool base. Building to our left, also a very dynamic base. Finished in 2020, last I have read, about 90% leased up. Right now, on this tenant, as we clear Washington and into this Art Deco Canyon. To our left, coming up, the Civic Opera Building by Graham Anderson, Probst and White. Limestone cladding, streamlined verticality, and setbacks the building rises. You notice they have a line theater and stage. The wings of the building are your armrests, the tower your backrest. When built, you use for water to raise and lower the stage inside. Then I have some carvings here and more carvings above of comedy and tragedy. What's tragic, this $20 million building opened up November 4th, 1929. A few days after the stock market crash within the Great Depression, Civic Opera bankruptcy after. Now home to the Lyric Opera, they're very successful. So down here, you can see below the next set of buildings, that's the basement and the train tracks. All the buildings to our right along the river are built atop air rights, and that means the developers bought the air above the train tracks from the railroad companies to build and develop buildings above that space. Very common in big cities. Huge project right now being built in Manhattan called Hudson Yards, all on air rights. Background to our right, green glass, black cladding, sloped roof, modern 83 Skidmore. And taller stone-clad building to our right coming up is postmodern, 92, Skidmore. So all 4 buildings designed by the same firm, 65 to 92, 1925. I know that most people aren't from Chicago, and some of you, especially adults with certain age, have seen these buildings on TV, but you may not realize it. If any of you on the street, aka Route 66, not one time, a beautiful grand concourse where the train station stood directly here to the top of Gotham Bank with a busman with a school bus. That's next, but in reality, the former main post office for the city of Chicago, built in phases and finally completed back in 1932. Art Deco, Graham Anderson, probed in white, was the world's busiest and biggest post office. Chicago being the biggest, but with the mail order and catalog capital of the world. So like Sears, Marshall Field, Montgomery Ward. We're talking roughly 2.7 million square feet of space, about 62 acres are under one roof, the perfect spot on top of train tracks. Building itself decommissioned back in '96 and sat empty for more than 2 decades. It was purchased back in 2016, underwent roughly $800 million rehab, and last I have read, about 90% leased up is now office space. So the stones coming up to our left, which you'll see momentarily, are reclaimed foundation stones from the train station dug up from that site and reused for the Riverwalk. For this one, we have 4 floors of parking on green space in the river. Not a fan of that. Their lobby is nice though. Underground parking next to water is very, very expensive, but can be done. And here to our left, gonna have River City. It may remind you of a complex we saw like 15 minutes ago, Marina City. If it does, it should. Designed by the same architect, Bertrand Goldberg. The building here to our left is 20 years later, 1986. Once again, a small marina at the base for boaters on the dock in that space. They can leave their boats in the water year-round. When it gets very, very cold out, they turn on bubblers in that marina, so the water is moving and agitated so it does not freeze up. It was built as rental, converted to condominiums 7 years ago. Everyone got bought out for $90.5 million. It's now once again, and in front to our right with the smokestacks, old Union Station power plant, 1931. Initially coal-powered, many years natural gas, decommissioned 2011, 8-9 years ago, placed on the endangered buildings list. One of the reasons why Chicago is here today. Location, 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 and accessibility. Out of Lake Michigan, down the main branch of the Chicago River. Then the south branch will be on right now, and 4 miles further down, the river flows to the Chicago Sanitary and Ship Canal. 1836 to 48, before there were any canals at all, the Native Americans lived on all this land, but at the portage. Pick up, carry, drag their canoes about 5 miles over some muddy, mucky land called Mud Lake. The first Europeans, Joliet and Marquette, into the area, 1611 until the early 1970s, was all railroad land. So last summer's announcement of Chicago Fire, our soccer team to build a brand new stadium. They're closing a plot of land to our left. We see the crane. It's going to have a capacity of roughly 22,000. Going to cost in excess of like $750 million, financed by the owner. Should be done sometime in 2028. To be called McDonald's Park, as you will kind of walk around the downtown and central area as a whole right now. I can see that much vertical construction. However, one of the more active zones downtown is called Fulton Market, 2.5 miles down northwest. See, office space downtown is still kind of suffering a lot post-COVID. It's got a bit better this past quarter. As of right now, office vacancy roughly 28%. That is still very, very high. Pre-COVID, like 13.5%. Class A buildings, the newest stuff, the most up-to-date buildings, including the post office, aren't doing that bad. And you burn north all the way to Fullerton Avenue, which is 2400 north. That's 3.5 miles north of where we are. Only a few buildings survived that fire, including Chicago Water Tower and Pumping Station at Michigan and Chicago, completed 2 years before the fire. That's 2 miles north. Old St. Pat's Church on Adams and her home survived, is still there. A cow did not kick over a lantern in a barn. That story was fabricated by a newspaper to sell more papers, and she was a part of the immigrant population. She was Irish Catholic and used as a scapegoat. They have no idea how the fire began, but somehow, some way, it did start in her barn. The winds that night were gusting in excess of 30+ miles an hour, strong enough to create fire tornadoes in the downtown area. The river was so dirty, nasty, and polluted, it caught on fire. Buildings built of stone crumbled, and buildings built of cast iron melted. People fleeing the flames, running north towards the city limits, and east towards the lake closer, of course. Sears Tower, tall pink building, barrels on top. But in the background of that gap, building back there, looks like it has toothpicks on top. Those toothpicks are called spires. And spires are considered to be part of the architectural integrity of the building, which means they count towards the height when measured. So officially in the books, that building, the Franklin, is 1,007 feet. Now sometimes spires work good in design, sometimes for me they do not. Where do spires work? Empire State Building, Chrysler Building, New York City. Liberty Place 1 and 2, downtown Philly. It is pyramid peak-like rooftop of the building. Spire is a small final vertical thrust. With a flat rooftop building and plop a spire, now you're kind of cheating for a vanity height. That building, the Franklin, without the spires, is 887 feet tall. For context, Titanic was 883 feet long, so almost the same. The taller limestone clad building to our northeast, graceful setbacks and 30-foot statue on top, Chicago Board of Trade Building, 1930. Art Deco by Holabird and Root. 30-foot statue on top. Roman goddess series, goddess of grain and agriculture. Some may recognize the building as being Wayne Enterprises from Batman Begins. An affinity for the modern residential high-rise here to our right with the articulated balconies with the dash pattern. This goes by its address, so of course, and to come up with a few nicknames of my own, like the Morse Code Building or the File Cabinet Building. 235 West Van Buren, Perkins and Will. Big bus on each 80s, early 90s, and the first Gulf War. One side is green space, one side is a parking lot. Last year was announced that the developer may want to build a building on that green space, designed by the same architect who did this one earlier. Here to our right on the core of this building is a partial map of downtown. South branch of the Chicago River. Red dot is this building where it sits in the street grid, saying you are here. North branch, main branch, where all three lines come together. Wolf Point. Breathtaking views you can see of the Sears / don't you ever follow my that love in my presence. Tower. Tallest building in the world from 1974 to 1996. Architect Bruce Graham, engineer Fosler Khan, Skidmore, Owens and Merrill. To the roof, broadcast antennas you have on top, but not considered architectural. They don't count the height. They did 1729. The building itself is composed of 9 tubes bundled together. The building itself ascends in height. Those tubes drop off at different floors. On a crystal clear day, air-wise, you can see 4 states from the top. Illinois, where we are, Indiana to the southeast, Michigan to the east across the lake, Wisconsin to our north. Daylight hours are about 3 minutes longer on top versus ground level because of your elevation. Building itself is able to sway up to 18 inches in very, very, very high winds. It lost its title of being the world's tallest back in 1996. The Twin Petronas Towers in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia opened up. The Burj Khalifa over in Dubai, 2,717 feet with the John Hancock on top of Sears. Right now, this country has a height limit of 2,000 feet because of the FAA. Slab of limestone to our left currently is 2 North Riverside Plaza. I like the original name from 1929 better. Chicago Daily News Building by Holabird and Root. Art Deco. The to its left down Madison, a 2-tone blue glass building. Some say remind them of an oversized cash register. Some say waterfall. Postmodern 87 Helmet Yacht. 1990 by Perkins and Will. Same firm, dash building. What's cool about this one is its engineering. Get that steel truss on top. That steel truss must support and suspend the southwest corner. Under the southwest corner, at the base at ground level, is a switching point where the train tracks crisscross each other. Very dense. Not a lot of room to drill down for the foundation. They weren't going to move active train tracks for a building. Along the river's edge, no problem. Southwest corner, problem. Instead of the southwest corner being fully supported with the ground up like you see on the riverside, that southwest corner is also partially suspended from the top down via that steel truss. That southwest corner is being partially cantilevered. The same architecture firm did the building into our right coming up next gap, kind of blue and purple to the glass into our right. 155 North Wacker from 2009. Again, same firm. It was 150 here to our left with a height to its ratios kind of off the charts. Now, all tall buildings, all of them sway back and forth in the wind a bit, some more than others. When they put a model of 150 through a wind tunnel test pre-construction, moving back and forth a bit more than the engineers liked. On top are 12 giant tanks of water. One of those tanks hold about 160,000 gallons. It's all about inertia. Think of a ballast tank on the boat. If the wind pushes the building in one direction, one of those tanks slosh to the other side to counteract the forces of those winds. Those water tanks can also be used It's a secondary fire suppression system. Block B, 25 stories tall, lost its title of being world's largest back in 1943 with the opening of the Pentagon. 3 buildings side by side to our right that have one thing in common, all 3 by the same architecture firm over 20 years, Cone, Patterson, and Fox of New York. Same firm, tall pink building, barrels on top in front of Sears, that explored the Riverwalk here to our right. So you can now walk from Lake Street to Lake Michigan along the river's edge uninterrupted. 10 years ago, you could not do that. And the roadway to our right is Wacker Drive, named for Charles Wacker, the first head of the Chicago Plan Commission, one of the first bi-level roadways built anywhere, and to help separate that traffic. Initially, lower level was for trucks, so you can load and unload all your goods to the buildings along the roadway. That's where the ugly stuff is, out of sight, out of mind. Upper level, cars and pedestrians. But of course, some of the car chase scenes from The Dark Knight and Blues Brothers take place on Lower Wacker. We like to talk about some of the TV shows and movies that have been made or portrayed in Chicago over the years, especially in my lifetime. Like one of my favorites is The Fugitive with Harrison Ford from 1993. Also made Now You're Gonna Have Backdraft with Kurt Russell. We made Candyman. I hated that movie. In My Best Friend's Wedding. I don't talk about that. She was in the Motor Company. 1990, Home Alone, Northern Suburbs. Late 80s, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Adventure the Babysitting, Chucky, First Child's Play. And more recently, they have TV shows like Chicago Fire, PD and Med, Empire on Fox, Divergent film, Transformers B, first slash in the building for the first setback. Second slash for the roof line. Third slash for the building to the left, and small side profile. Respect. And certainly not to dampen anyone's mood or spirit. The worst disaster to ever happen in Chicago in terms of loss of life happened directly to our right coming up on the river, July 24th, 1915. It's called the Eastland disaster, E-A-S-T-L-A-N-E. Short version, boat tied up here to our right. It's going to take 2,500 people to Michigan City for their picnic. Vessel always had balance and ballast tank problems. They added extra lifeboats for steers at the Titanic. Top heavy, unstable, not designed very well. It rolled over onto its side right here in the river, killing more than 800 people. Again, July 24th, 1915. Part of the city's history, part of the river's history. As we clear Clark to our right coming up, gonna have pediments by the doorways, pediments on top. Kind of reminds you of a Greek temple or a government building. Postmodern, 92. 77 West Wacker. You step down one of the brutalist and somewhat stubby 55 West Wacker, 1968. Always kind of reminded me of a giant pound sign or a hashtag on your telephone. But do notice how the roof line on 55 is being respected by the building to its left. In 35 West Wacker, 1989 by Kevin Roche and John Dinkaloo. That is headquarters to Leo Burnett. The advertising from this giving us all icons like Twitter the Tiger, down, sit back, relax, have a glass or two. Now don't say much about the hotel here to our right coming up because for me, it kind of ruins the street wall. Everything else is nice and flush against the sidewalk. That building is set back, and personally, I just don't like the design. Love that green terracotta and gold leaf-clad building 2 blocks in front to our right. There is real gold leaf on top. The carbide and carbon building from 1929, Art Deco by the Burnham brothers, the sons of city planner and architect Daniel Burnham. It's rumored they got the influence from a champagne bottle. Now a hotel called the Pendry, and to its right, looks like a sharpened pencil, Prudential Plaza number 2, 1990. Spires on buildings like that work fine. What's this Morton's, the steakhouse, the building right now is being converted to roughly 250 apartments. And I'm looking at prices. A studio in that building, roughly 640 square feet, is going to run about $2,200 a month for a studio. Right, coming up, building side by side, very slender neo-Gothic building, initially called Mather Tower, named for Alonzo Mather, a railroad baron. The skinniest skyscraper in Chicago, now a hotel. Wedged in there like a cat after a root canal, to an addition for the building right next door. Initially, the London Guaranteed and Accident Building, 1923. Back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, very popular jazz club in the base called London House. The building's been renovated, now a hotel called London House. Have time while you're here, visit the rooftop bar, good views, good drinks. And this spot was constructed Fort Dearborn. And Fort Dearborn is the westernmost government outpost of the then United States. Now to our left, so here in Michigan Avenue, now coming into view, the elegant Gothic Revival Tribune Tower, 1925. Back in 1922, The paper sponsored an international architectural competition. Grand prize, 100 grand to any architect that could design the world's most beautiful building. Over 250 entries, and that design won. Submitted by two New York architects, John Mead Tao and Raymond Hood. Raymond Hood went on to help design Rockefeller Center. Near the pinnacle of those upside-down L's called flying buttresses, known by the Gothic style. 8 to 10 years ago, Chicago Tribune did vacate that building. It's now 162 condominiums. And to our left, coming up with a peacock emblem on top, NBC Tower. Limestone cladding, streamlined verticality, and setbacks the building rises. Art Deco, right? 1920s, 1930s, right? Not that one. Postmodern, Echo Deco, echoing Art Deco. Yet more Owings and Merrill. But where's NBC headquartered? 30 Rock, Art Deco, and Streamline. Taking some personality from 30 Rock with that verticality, some personality from Tribune Tower with the flying buttresses, and meshing everything together. And the sculpture to our left on the bridge coming up, Chicago, Rising from the Lake by Milton Horn, 1954. Initially on a parking garage. Parking garage torn down back in 83. Sculpture removed, was forgotten about for more than a decade. It's now been there since 98. So you all may or may not know the Chicago River, which of course we are currently on, is a river that flows backwards. Not initially, the river that flowed into Lake Michigan back in 1900 with the opening and completion of that canal that reversed the flow of it on purpose. The reason they did that in those years, no high rises, but industry. Like most big cities, we use the river here as a giant toilet, dumping everything you can ever imagine to the river that will then flow into the lake. This is where we get our drinking water from, meaning that being sucked back into the intake cribs and pipes. Yum. Causing people to get sick and die from cholera and typhoid. So they reversed the flow of the river so it flows south, so that this may go to move downstream. And the way they did that by digging that canal. It's a bit deeper than the bottom of the river on a slight angle to via gravity. Now that fountain shoots a 200-foot arc of water across this river. So, my great architecture sad, I have been following what used to be a piece of vacant land to our left at the corner by the bridge since 2005. So back then, there's a proposal for that site called the Fulton Spire. 2 years later, blackbirds may fly in looking for crumbs. If he flies in, don't be scared, he's looking for food. 1965 and 68, designed by architects George Shipwright and John Heinrich. Of a giant 3-leaf clover or a shamrock being extruded in the sky, or I guess a giant fidget spinner to the shape of that building. The circular formation on top was a restaurant. No, did not revolve. I think it's a Chicago flag. 2 blue stripes, 3 white stripes, and 4 red stars. Each white stripes for a section of the city. Top white stripe, north side. Bottom white stripe, south side. Middle white stripe, west side. There's no east side, you have the lake. East side neighborhoods, no east side section. Top blue stripe for the north branch of the river and lake. Bottom blue stripe, south branch of the river and canal. 1 star, Fort Dearborn, 1803. Another star, Great Chicago Fire, 1871. Another star, World Columbus Exposition, 1893. Another star, Century of Progress World's Fair, 1933-34. The stars in a flag. Small under the water that goes around the corner here to our right is called Ogden Slip, named after the city's first mayor, William Butler Ogden. Chicago was founded as a town back in 1833, population roughly 400. March 4th, 1837, population roughly 4,000. Chicago became a city. Today, about 2.7 million people in the city limits. Cook County about 5.1 million. Metropolitan area about 9.5 million. Starting sometime this summer, I believe, small peninsula here to our right will be turned into a park. It's named after the area's first permanent non-native settler, Jean-Baptiste Port-du-Sable. Port-du-Sable, who came to the area back in 1779. He was born down in Haiti back in 1745. His mother was a Haitian slave. His father was French. His homestead was where the current day Tribune Tower, Wrigley Building, and Apple Store are today. He had roughly 20 acres at that site. He was there for about 20 years, and at that time, that was the lakefront. For the most part, everything in this area east of Michigan Avenue is landfill. Some natural, some man-made. Go to Grant Park, Buckingham Fountain, landfill. Museum Campus, Soldier Field, landfill. Neighborhood right called Streeterville, landfill. Expensive landfill, but still landfill. Got 180 acres of it. Other 4 double-deckers, Lakeshore Dock above, the youngest, 1937. To clear the road and explosion, the buildings of architecture before and around us. But here to our left, coming up, a newer landmark now graces the downtown skyline. Chicago's 3rd tallest building, and right now, tallest building in the world by a woman-owned architectural firm, Studio Gang Architects. Architect's name is Jeannie Gang. She's headquartered in Chicago. Initially called Vista Tower, now the residence at St. Regis. Bottom 10 floors gonna have a roughly 200-room hotel. They're above about 400 condos. As you can see, there's like 5 to 6 different shades of green glass transitioning up and down the building. That space near the top, there's no glass up there. That is called a blow-through floor. They would not add glass to that space. It will stay open, as you see, to allow the air and wind to flow to the building that helps with the structure's stability. No, the residents cannot access that space. I mentioned earlier, the building at 150 North Riverside has 12 tanks of water on top, no, roughly 160,000 gallons. St. Regis has tanks roughly 400,000 gallons. So you get the pocket change. They have a full floor penthouse on floor number 79, 6,300 square feet, 4 beds, 4.5 baths, with 9.76 million, if you're interested. So I remember it clearly, maybe hard for you all to imagine, back in 2000, here to our left was a 9-hole, 28-acre, par 3 public golf course. 60 years ago, railroad land. 160 years ago, for the most part, there was no land here, the harbor. That's a brand new neighborhood, Lakeshore East. Triangular shaped building to our left, kind of blue and silver glass, Swiss Hotel. 1989, architect Harry Weiss. Same guy did the river cottages. Here, the triangular shape helps to maximize river views from the hotel rooms. But again, I love how the colors, shapes, and textures of all 3 buildings to our left kind of visually slam together. The background of the gap to our left, that undulating floor plate, that is called Aqua. Also by Studio Gang Architects. Bottom 20 floors, Radisson Blue Hotel. Next 30 floors, apartments. Last 30 floors, condos. The waves are balconies. Back in the late 80s, they realized that thin marble was cracking and buckling, was in danger of falling off the building. Oh, whoops, did not hold up to the freeze thaw cycle that we have every year and have had every year in this area to the completion of planet Earth. Until we reclad that building with granite, North Carolina, that cost roughly $80 million. And finally, to our right, that dome on top, the Hotel Intercontinental. There's nothing in that dome but mechanical space. Building itself, 1929. Initially called the Medina Athletic Club for the Shriners. It was a men's club and hotel. So now we are docking, so please do stay in your seats as we're docking to give you the thumbs up. We can tap against the seawall slightly. We don't want anyone to stumble over and hurt themselves. Look around. Don't forget your cameras, glasses, cell phones, purses, bags, any personal belongings. If you don't have garbage, please collect that so you can toss it. Garbage can there and by the exit ramp. If you have comments from me, near the tip of those stairs, you took boarding photos.